Hey, it's Sri here, and in today's video, I'm going to talk you through one of the most important factors for creating a successful marriage. Now, before we dive in, I know that you're going through a really tough time in your marriage. Most likely, if you're watching this video, there might be infidelity, there might be a separation looming. So I know it's obviously a really tough time in your life at the moment. So that's naturally going to stir up a lot of emotions for you, but I really want to encourage you to remember that there is hope, that transformation is real. And just like my clients like Angie and Laurie and Sarah and Rochelle and all these beautiful people who have created such massive shifts in their lives, they started off where you are right now. So make sure you're taking in the content, make sure you're watching all of these videos, and make sure you stick around to the very end as well, and I'll give you a free gift that I know you'll really get a lot of value from as well. And make sure you hit that subscribe button below and click on that bell notification as well, so every week you get access to my latest videos where I talk more about male psychology, how to recover from a separation, how to heal from within as well, because that is a huge component of being able to move forward, both in your life and within your marriage as well. Now, I was sort of thinking about the other day about shooting this video, and for me it's really important to be authentic and real. You know, I think I've probably gone through many years in my life where I was sort of worried about what other people were going to think if I said certain things or spoke my truth. And just being the kind of person I have been over the years, it's always been about making sure that, you know, I keep the peace, that there isn't too much drama that's stirred. But the reality is I'm working in a very sensitive niche. And what I mean by that is the people that I work with are going through some really tough times. And so that's sometimes going to make me feel a little bit like, oh geez, I want to be a little bit careful about what I say to this person because I don't want to hurt them. Because I care, I feel what my clients feel at such a deep level that I don't want them to feel pain. But I've also learned over the years that the most important thing that we can do is operate with integrity. And just like in the 4 Agreements book, one of the important agreements there is be impeccable with your word. You've got to operate with integrity. And so for me, if I'm going to speak to you in this particular video about what I believe is one of the most important facets of being able to create a healthy marriage, I've got to make sure that's authentic and real to me. Now, over the years, after speaking with literally thousands of people in terms of my private practice and my group coaching and all of that sort of stuff, I see lots of different patterns existing in marriages. But there's one thing that I'll be really honest with you about, and that is a lot of people that I do speak to. And it may not necessarily even be clients, but people who have, you know, I've had initial consultation calls and so on with. What I find is that their husbands treat them like absolute shit. They treat them poorly, there's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of narcissistic behavior, sometimes sociopathic behavior. Just to be clear here, you know, I know that there's always 2 sides to every story. There's always going to be challenges. Sometimes one person can trigger the other and force them to act in ways that are irrational and are different to who they really are. But I'm talking about some pretty disturbing stuff. You know, one of the persons that I had spoken to, I never forget, it was about 5 years ago, I think it was. And she told me that her husband had been pulling a gun on her and she still wanted to make the marriage work. And it hurt me on 2 counts. One was obviously the fact that he's holding a gun to her. I mean, that terrified me. But on top of that, the fact that she's still wanting to work on a marriage where this sort of behavior is occurring. Now, some of you may have a different opinion, but I'm very clear cut on this. And that is, no sort of threats in terms of guns or violence or any of that sort of stuff is acceptable. And look, maybe that's just my world, but the reality is this is just something that I believe in. I don't believe in any of that sort of shitty behavior. I just think it's not acceptable stuff. So we've got to look at this and observe, like, what is actually happening here? Why is it that relationships can go south? And why is it that, I guess ultimately, people are making decisions to be with individuals like this? Now, obviously, my heart goes out to her, and I sincerely pray for her healing and her growth and all of that stuff. But I've observed, like I say, over the years, this sort of behavior occurring. So it's got me really thinking about what is it that creates success in marriages? What is it? Why is it that some people have extraordinary marriages and other people don't? Or other people are always struggling in their circumstances? And I really think it comes down to one really important factor, and that is the selection. Now you might be sitting there going, whoa, geez, thanks for the breakthrough answer here, Shri, but let's just think about that for a second. When we're younger, when we go through the process of actually dating someone, and even if it's in, even if you're a little bit older and you're going through the dating process again, selection is absolutely critical, because when we're going through that process, what happens is we're making decisions from our wounded filters. Now, what I mean by the wounded filters is that if you feel like you're not good enough as a person, if you're holding on to that at a subconscious level, you may not necessarily be thinking about it at a conscious level, but you might be just subconsciously holding on to those beliefs because you've had maybe a ton of negative experiences over the years. If you're holding on to that, then what's going to happen is whoever you draw in is going to reflect parts of yourself. In other words, if you feel like you're not good enough, that other person is going to bring up certain behaviors or act in certain ways that are going to reflect your feelings of inadequacy. Now that's a really, really tough pill to swallow sometimes, because we're sitting here going, hang on, this guy seemed really nice, he seemed really kind, he was charming. Often some of the women that I speak to are, really, really focused on a strong masculine man. And so what comes with that sometimes is some other behaviors that can be quite, difficult to be around. So it becomes really, really challenging a lot of the time for individuals to make sure that they're selecting correctly and making the best decisions. So what we attract into our lives, both from a person and also in terms of the material world as well, often reflects aspects of our own self. So if you're younger, or even if you are older and you're not conscious of some of those wounds that you're holding on to, there's a good chance that someone is going to come into your life that brings up some of those wounds on the inside. And what happens is we potentially get drawn to that person. Then it seems wonderful, and just like anything early in the piece, it seems wonderful and everything seems to be flowing. And then over time, there might be a few little red flags, but because you've invested time and energy into it, you want to make it work. So you put more time and more energy into it, and then that person starts to engage in certain behaviors you don't really like. But because internally you don't feel like you've got a strong enough center, or you're feeling inadequate on some level, what's worse and what brings up more intense emotions is this feeling of being alone. So you put all this effort in, you're hoping that this person shifts. Then there might be a little moment here and there where things start to improve and you get drawn into that again. And then before you know it, you're immersed in this experience, in this relationship at such a deep level, it's very hard and it feels very difficult to break away from it. But here's the thing, you've got to be aware of those fundamental core values that person holds on to. You've got to be aware of those red flags, of the signs. And they don't need to be extreme. I was speaking to a person that I know, and unfortunately they've just recently separated with their partner. And it was really unfortunate, because I remember catching up with him a number of months back. And I recall his partner being quite critical towards him over something really, really minute. It was something to do with brunch. And it was just so small, so minute. And if she was going, starting to get a little bit aggressive or angry towards him because of that, then you knew that there was the capability for some of these other behaviors to occur. And sure enough, separated. But there's a lot of, unfortunate circumstances that have occurred post that breakup. And now he's starting to get a really good understanding of the fact that, these decisions that had been made in terms of selection have now come back to bite him a little bit. And that's a really, really tough pill to swallow. But the most important thing in order to move forward in any of the situations is to basically get to a place where you take responsibility, to own it, to recognize it, to understand the little behaviors that have occurred over time. Because when you learn, when you grow from something, when you have an experience that hasn't worked out and you learn from it, then you can apply those learnings and move forward. You can then essentially get to a place where you take all of these past experiences and use them for good. And I'll tell you that right now, even in my life, I've had, relationships in the past where they haven't worked out. Now, at the time, I had invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money into the relationships. And, it was hard to sometimes let them go. But it was really important to let them go, because there was one thing that petrified me more than anything else in my life. And that was making a poor decision about a relationship. It simply wasn't an option. I always remember my family growing up always telling me some really important things about, when it comes to actually getting married and meeting someone, you have to have some fundamentals there. And at the time, I was like, oh, look, forget about all that. It doesn't matter. I'll make the right decision. But I remember very clearly in my past relationships having these experiences, learning from them and going, oh my goodness, those lessons that I had learned, those bits of information, those words of wisdom were so important in the grand scheme of my life, because it made me make the best decision of my life, which is marrying my wife. And I couldn't have done that without those past experiences. So believe me, I know some of you might be listening to this stuff and just getting triggered like crazy. And I always want you to know that I'm coming from a place of love whenever I'm saying these things, because I want to free you from the pain. And what I see often is that people are with men, and this is not a gender thing, by the way. I know that there's absolutely situations where some men are with really, really bad and toxic women, and vice versa. So it goes right across the board. But if we recognize that if you can free yourself from that pain, if you can recognize that by understanding what's going on, to take ownership of what's going on, and then being able to use the learnings to make the best decision moving forward, then your life really can shift. And that's a scary place. I appreciate that. And that's why I so often talk about doing the healing from the inside. Really, really going deep and creating those shifts. Because if you can then feel like you're enough, if you can do and make the changes on the inside, if you can really start to elevate your self-worth, your self-confidence and self-esteem and so on, but still maintaining that beautiful feminine essence, so you can allow a masculine man to stay in his masculine energy in a beautiful way, then you've got this lovely balance. And just to be clear, masculine energy is not aggressive or macho or anything like that. It has a solidarity to it. It has a strength to it, where the feminine energy knows that she can relax and be taken and supported and guided and being that source of strength for them. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But often what happens is that both energies end up becoming or going to the extremes, and then that causes all sorts of problems and all sorts of chaos within relationships and marriages. So, healing is a beautiful thing. It's an important thing. It's the most important thing, because as you shift, all areas of your life start to shift. But sometimes we have to take ownership, and sometimes that means really looking ourselves in the mirror and just being dirt level honest about some of the decisions that we've made. Now listen, as I said, I've made a million mistakes in the past, and I'll continue to make a ton of mistakes in the future. It's the beauty of life. I think it's a wonderful thing. We're all human. We're all flawed in our own ways. So all we can do though is take ownership. And unfortunately what I see a lot is people will get involved in these poor marriages, and they're clinging for dear life, hoping for some miracle that that person suddenly changes and becomes this incredible knight in shining armor, beautiful strength, but at the same time this incredible vulnerability where they can make their partner feel incredible and improve their self-worth and prioritize them, put all their energy into them and so on. But life is not as simple as that. And sometimes we have to just take ownership of the fact that maybe we have actually made a poor selection in the past, but we can actually learn from that and move forward. Now, yes, sometimes there are situations where we've got a good man who has good values, but is just going through a bit of a healing crisis at the moment, or going through some sort of midlife crisis, or may have just been wounded through, going to the war or whatever it may be. There are absolute exceptions, there are challenges there, but once again, we've still got to look at the fundamentals within that person. How much do you actually know your husband? How much do you understand him at the very core of him? Do you understand his fears? Do you understand his wounds? Do you understand his triggers? Do you understand more about how his brain actually operates and so on? Or has it just been a case of you guys are just companions and you've hung out for a while and those sorts of things? We've got to get clear, because a high quality marriage has depth. And the way we get depth is by understanding each other at the deepest level. I really believe that. And yeah, sure, there are people who, coexist and have a nice time and have some fun, so without going into depth. But to me, that's still missing a certain dimension to that relationship. I don't believe that people are able to get to the heights of love that maybe other individuals can when they get that level of depth in their marriage and within themselves. So really take the time to explore and do a bit of a stock take. Really understand it. Understand your marriage, understand your husband, and really look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, is this someone that I genuinely want to spend the rest of my life with? Not from my wounds, not from a place where I feel scared to be alone or any of that sort of stuff. If you weren't afraid of being alone, if you had all the finances taken care of, if everything was beautiful and rosy in all areas of your life, would you still be with this man? And sometimes we have to ask ourselves that question. So I hope this helps. As I said, I just wanted to be really open, really honest, really raw about all of this, because I really think that in order to move forward in any area of our lives, we have to be dirt level honest. So if you are in a place where you're battling, if you don't feel like you're able to get to that place where you're discerning or even aware of what's going on the inside and unsure about whether this is the right person for you, then I'd encourage you just to, in the description section below, just click on that link where it says book a call with me. Just click on that link, choose a time that works for you, and I'll contact you at the scheduled time, just so I can see where you're at now, where you want to get to, and how we can bridge that gap. And also if it's something that you feel connected to in terms of my work, and then potentially wanting to jump into my program, the Authentic Relationship System, which is an incredible program that is going to make massive shifts in your life and also within your marriage. But I really want to make sure that if you're going to book in, that you're serious about this. I really want to make sure that if you're going to hop on a call, that you're actually going to show up, that you're really going to make an effort, you're going to be present, because that's how we create shifts, that's how we create changes. And so only serious inquiries, please. I really, really appreciate you. And I appreciate you watching this video and taking the time to really digest some of this stuff. If you've liked this video, make sure you hit that like button below. If you want to get more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And do let me know, about your situation. Just write it down in the comment section below. Let me know a little bit about your marriage or the kind of man that you believe your husband is. If you feel like just sharing that information, I'd love to hear it, and I'll make sure I respond to you as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And if you want to learn how to get your husband back after a separation, click this video above. And if you want to learn how to stop emasculating your man, click this video above. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the next video.